Welcome back to the segment presented by HX Home Solutions. Don't forget, mention IlliniGuys and get $1,000 off your project. They are the premier home and office renovation people. Check them out, hxhomesolutions.com. We're here now joined by Kedric Prince. He's director of recruiting for IlliniGuys.com. Matt Stevens. He is the football writer and analyst extraordinaire for IlliniGuys.com as well. A little Illini roundtable now. I want to kind of talk about things. We're into July. And fellas, let's start off with, the new Big Ten is here. 18 teams, all-time record as the 4 teams come in from the Pac-12, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Your thoughts as we enter this new era of the Big Ten?
I think it'd be interesting to see how the travel situation plays out. Teams going coast to coast. I think obviously the super conference is here. The SEC and Big Ten are kind of in control of the college football landscape, but even though the Big 12 and ACC have good basketball teams, it's still SEC Big Ten when it comes to even those areas. So what I'm interested to see here is to see how these teams work against how these conferences kind of work against each other and with each other. Like, how does UCLA and USC, how do they handle playing at Illinois or at Indiana or at Michigan or wherever it is, Michigan State? So some of those tough venues that maybe they didn't see as much of on the West Coast.
At first I wasn't a fan, but now that it's here, I'm kind of excited about it because it's different. It's something new. With college athletics in general. I mean, there's been so many, different things that they're doing now. It's going to be nice to see Illinois have to play Oregon or a UCLA. I think all that's kind of unique, within itself. One of the things that Brad mentioned that I'm curious to see, because you still hear a lot of athletic directors talk about, balancing the traveling, and a lot of coaches are still complaining about the academic part of it, because that's going to be a big issue as well. And then the non-revenue sports, I mean, how is that going to all, work itself out? But, just the new look, and, then the other thing is, if we're talking specifically football, just the style of play. The Big Ten is kind of, they're not that old smash mouth school still, but, the teams that are coming in traditionally throw the ball. So I'm kind of curious to see which team, I guess, or which part of the country is going to force their will on each other.
I'm kind of with Kat on this. I think from a travel standpoint, I agree with Sturdy. I'm kind of wondering how long the non-revenue sports are going to do this, to be honest. I'm kind of curious as to if the Pac-12 will reform itself in the non-revenue sports, simply because money will dictate that trying to go cross country for all of these sports is just not going to work out well economically. From a football standpoint, I think the Big Ten is going to get a real serious jarring by some of these schools that are coming in from the Pac-12, not because they're more talented, but because they're actually equipped to play Big Ten football. Dan Lanning's been playing Big Ten football in Oregon for quite a while now. And Washington was just in the college football national championship game for a reason. So I think that these schools better, and I think the elimination of divisions in football is really going to cause some problems for some people, specifically the schools that were in the Western Division. I think it's going to be a new reality for them. And then I wonder about, again, just economically, I kind of wonder how long this is going to go. And then I wonder how, from just a cultural standpoint, who's going to partner up with who. And what I don't mean that like geographically, I mean, like, does Southern Cal and, Oregon feel comfortable right off the bat kind of getting together with Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State and saying, yeah, we're a big brand too. We don't want to do that either, because that's been a major emphasis, especially with this new TV deal of Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State kind of throwing their weight around and saying, yeah, you all can do that and all on that FS1 thing and play those Friday night games. We're not going to do that. Sorry. And I can't wait for like USC and Oregon to go, hey, by the way, that big noon kickoff thing, that's 9 a.m. local time for us. That ain't happening. Sorry, bud. So there's going to be some big brands from the West Coast that try to throw their weight around here, and I'll be interested to see how that works out.
I cannot wait to see the clash of traditions. You have 3 programs that are pretty high up in the football pecking order with USC, Washington, and of course, probably the team that looks the biggest and baddest right now, Oregon, coming headlong into the Big Ten, and they want to prove their brands are equivalent to the Michigans, Ohio States, and Penn States of the world, and they want to prove they're above the rest of the Big Ten. I think it's going to be fantastic. And on the basketball side, you've got the home of the Wizard of Westwood, UCLA, with all their tradition, is going to try to come into the Big Ten and compete with the Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois triumvirate. I can't wait for these matchups, and I'm so excited. Yeah, there's some downsides, but for the first year, I'm just going to enjoy all the new stuff.
Speaking of basketball, Illinois basketball recruiting just really has been in the transfer portal and then also in the high school ranks. It's been a past, 90 days. It's been just outstanding. Sturdy, how do you feel that this staff came out of this period right now? There was a time, like always, fans start to wonder, gee, what are they doing? And you missed on this guy, or this didn't happen, or Damas didn't come back, and neither did Hawkins. But your thoughts on start us off with how the team did filling the roster.
Well, it's really astonishing what they've been able to do with the talent level they brought in. They have an Elite Eight team, and this team's more talented than the Elite Eight team was. When you look at these guys, you have two guys who are mocked as first rounders. You have multiple guys who are NBA, talent level players. Now, are they all 23 years old? No. So that's a little bit different. But they've done a fantastic job putting this together and understanding also they have some multi-year guys and knowing that next year the portal changes a little bit, where you're going to need to recruit some more high schoolers, where you're going to need to go in the portal. You're not going to have that extra fifth year guys. They're not going to be there. The COVID guys are done. So they did a really good job. I mean, this is just, I honestly, I thought Brad Underwood's done a really good job in the offseason, added pieces every year. This year was his best work because not only are they good, they fit really well together.
I will start right off. This is by far his best work. When you lose 80% of your scoring, we can be honest, everybody was kind of concerned. Brad has always done a really good job with the transfer portal. They kind of got off to a rocky start. There was rumblings about kids going to commit, and then some things happened where the kid didn't commit. But when you look at this roster, Brad mentioned a couple guys, depending upon what recruiting service you look at. I've seen 3 guys that could potentially be first-round draft picks next year. Now, you mentioned 23 years old, and with the way the NBA is, you only have to be 18, 19 years old to be drafted. You could average 3 points a game, and they look at everything based on potential. So this roster, to me personally, the way they put it together, how deep it is, and Brad what he has done is he has, for the last 2 years, wanted to outscore people. And he's doing that again. I mean, you look at the roster right now, everybody can shoot the basketball. And, there's been no games, there's been practices, but we've seen the video footage of Ty Rodgers even looking to shoot jump shots. So this team is capable of putting a lot of points on the board. The only thing I would say that they're missing that alpha dog, but that one guy like a Terrence Shannon, which is hard to replace. But I'm kind of curious to see if they have one. Could it be a freshman? Could it be one of the older guys? Could it be Ty Rodgers? But they'll need that one tough guy when things are going bad, when teams are struggling, or coaches are getting on the players. Who's going to be that guy to get them over the hump?
I think Illinois hired one of the best junior college coaches in the world in Brad Underwood. And I think that he used that experience that he had in order to put this roster together. I don't think anybody should be shocked that Brad Underwood's going to do this annually. I fully expect that Illinois will be replacing 8 or 9 guys every year. I fully expect Illinois to go into the transfer portal for a lot of their recruiting every single year. I fully expect that Brad Underwood likes doing this, and he's really good at it. So I know it's frustrating for fans. I know they don't get a really good idea of who's on the team from year to year, and they don't get to make a connection with these guys. But Brad Underwood's going to use his junior college experience to make Illinois competitive every single year, and it's just going to be new pieces. I fully expect not only do I fully expect, but I am pleased to announce I think that Illinois is transfer portal U, and I think that they're going to prove it once again this year that they're going to have that mentality going into each and every year, is that we'll just go into the portal and we'll get new guys and we'll be good again.
I think that the most unique part of this off season was the way, if you don't hit exactly who you want in the transfer portal, you just go to Europe. And getting a guy who was mocked in the first round from Europe and one guy who's, mocked from the first round as a high school player it shows that they're willing to use all the tools at their disposal. High school players, people from the transfer portal, people playing in Europe. And I think that's what a coach is supposed to do. They're supposed to use all the available tools to create the strongest roster possible. And with two guys who were mocked in the first round, that's a great honor for the team. And I didn't realize that when Brad mocks me all the time, that it was a great honor for me.
So the fellas here on the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. Coming up in just a moment after a quick timeout, we'll find out from these guys what they think the basketball team's outlook is for this season. Talking football as well. This is the Sports Spectacular, powered by IlliniGuys.com.
Imagine this is your money and someone wants to take it from you. Who is it? The IRS. Guess what? They want your money and they can take it, all of it if they want. So what do? You fight back by letting our team of experts work it out with the IRS so you can keep your money. Call right now and learn for free how we can help you put it back in your pocket. 5 minutes of your time can save you thousands of dollars. So please call right now.
The abuse of opioids and heroin is killing people. Recover Now is a new national movement to help you curb your addiction. You can get help now, right now, and you can get clean in as little as 7 to 30 days. So don't wait, change your life. Call the number on your screen right now. We can help. You could have a brand new life in as little as 7 to 30 days. You can change your life. Call the number on your screen right now.
Welcome back, second half hour. Glad you're still with us here. Larry, Mike, and Brad, joined by Matt Stevens and Kedric Prince of the Illini Guys as we continue our roundtable here as we welcome in the month of July. Fellas, we were talking Illini basketball recruiting a moment ago. Give me your thoughts on the outlook of the season. Brad, you mentioned Illinois, Underwood finally getting the team to the Elite Eight. But as you said, this team even more talented than that team possibly. What's the ceiling for this team as you see it still here in the offseason?
Well, I think this team has a Final Four ceiling. I really do. I mean, and now they have a long way to go to get there because there's a lot of unproven pieces. But the talent level is high enough that this is a team that has a chance to make a postseason run. They have a chance to, I don't know that they'd be the Big Ten favorite today, but I think they do have a chance to win the Big Ten. Brett, what's Underwood won either a Big Ten tournament or a Big Ten title 3 of the last 4 years. So it wouldn't be shocking to see them right at the top of the conference standings as well. They have a ton of depth at multiple positions. So not only they have size depth, they have guard depth, they have wing depth, and they have high-end talent. It just happens to be really young.
You know what? A lot of people are pegging Indiana and Purdue to win the Big Ten, I guess, because of who they have returning and who they brought in the in the offseason. A lot of the Illinois players that are, who are predicted to be pretty good are either younger or from overseas. You can't count Brandon Underwood out. He has been extremely successful, over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And like Brad just mentioned, they're coming fresh off of an Elite Eight performance. One of the things I think that if they're looking to get back to the Elite Eight or try to get to a Final Four or to advance to the second weekend again, I think it's really, really important that they win some of the non-conference games. Their non-conference schedule is just brutal. I mean, it's not easy. And, you can play the Alabamas and Arkansas, Missouri, who's supposed to be better this year, and Duke, but you can't lose all those games and expect to get a better seed. Last year when Terrence Shannon was out, I think if they would have won a couple more games, instead of playing UConn in the Elite Eight, they might have been in a different bracket or a different seed. So the outlook, I think, on paper, games aren't won on paper. I think this team can score a lot of points. I think they'll eventually figure out, who likes to do what. And I do think they're going to put a lot of points on the board. I've heard a lot of rumblings about coaches already talking about how are you going to stop a bunch of guys or that can shoot the basketball because you can't key off one person. So that's what Brad Underwood likes. He likes matchups, and he's put together a roster where you have to not only start one or two people, but all 5 positions on the floor.
If this team defends, they can win the Big Ten regular season championship. If they don't, they'll be a middle of the road Big Ten team, and they'll still probably be an NCAA tournament team. But if this team defends, they can be a high top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then you roll the dice and you see what happens. I hate going further than that because I don't know what the bracket is, and the NCAA tournament's just a crapshoot to begin with. But if this team decides that they want to get in the stance and defend, they can be really a real problem in this league, and they can probably win the league. If they don't, they'll be a middle tier team in the Big Ten.
I think this team could go to the Final Four. It's really going to be about player development, and teams tend to play better for Brad Underwood later in the season. That works out perfectly. And I think while he's done an incredible job on the roster, he's going to have to play guys a little less if they're starters to keep everybody happy. And I think that could really mean that team is relatively fresh-legged in March, and that could be a very fun time for Illini fans.
Certainly that will be an advantage. There's no question about that. And we think about, again, just the chemistry of it. We saw 2 years ago what bad chemistry can do in the locker room, how that can transcend to play on the court. And so hopefully, again, it feels like these guys at the moment get along very well. Turning to football now, the Illini football team, it's now year 4 with Brett Bielema. We've had the one big year, a couple of 5 and 7 seasons now. What are you looking for out of this team, and how far can they go?
Well, I think 6 wins has to be the goal. I mean, you have to be playing when the bowl season comes around, and 6-7 wins has to be the goal every year for this program if they want to make that next step. Bielema has raised the floor of this program. I mean, 4, 5, 6 wins. I mean, they've done well, but to get to that next level, they're going to have to show that they can maybe win 7 or 8 games consistently, and they're not there yet. Now their schedule sets up where they do have winnable games, but they have also a lot of toss-up games, and so you're going to have to win those toss-up games if you want to get to the 6-7 win plateau.
I think right away, when I think about the football team, the first thing is, you're right. If you want to get over the hump and you don't want to be considered just a team where everyone wants to schedule for homecoming, you have to try to at least get to 6 wins. And you have to beat some people that you aren't supposed to beat. I mean, let's face it. It's going to be tough to beat, Washington or Michigan, but it can be done. And are you going to do it night in, night out every weekend? Probably not. But you have to be able to go. And if you're not going to win all those games, like I said, you have to win some of them and win the games you're supposed to. You at least have to be competitive. And that's probably the one thing about Brett Bielema that I really, really like, is that they haven't been blown out a lot. I mean, they've been in a lot of games, and, no disrespect to the previous staff under Lovie Smith, but you don't see a lot of 62-0 games with this staff. I think they put together a good system. Matt Stevens and I, we've always had a lot of, fun comments about running the football versus throwing the football. I think, one of the reasons they don't get blown out is because of ball control. They don't allow themselves to be put out there to let people score, 60 points, because they're not going to give the ball back to them. So I like the staff, and I like what they're doing. And from a recruiting standpoint, they're finally starting to win some of these battles where they can compete with some of the other schools outside, of the typical traditional schools that's been in the conference that they've struggled with. So I think 6-7 wins should be expected every year with the state of Illinois and the way they're recruiting right now.
You're going to find out real quick how this season could go. September 7th, 6:00, Memorial Stadium in Champaign, Kansas comes to town. If Kansas both races Illinois, September and October could get real rough. If Illinois can pick up a win in that week 2 game, everything gets real interesting in September and October, because this team is talented enough to compete with pretty much everybody on their schedule, I think, short of Michigan, Oregon, and Penn State. Unfortunately, they have all 3 of those in that late September to October stretch. The reason I pegged the Kansas game is that it's a momentum game in which that if Kansas comes in and boat races them, suddenly everybody starts wondering where this season's going real quick if they lose big to Kansas at home. And then a lot of those other games that they're either toss-ups or they're not favored to win, it could get real rocky even before they hit Halloween. But I do think that there's momentum that they can pick up early, and if they do that, you could see a postseason run for this team, and I think you could see a 6, 7, maybe even 8-win possibility for this team, because Brett Bielema does win a lot of conference toss-up games, and has a history of doing that. But if this season doesn't get off well, their schedule doesn't bode well for them later on in the year.
I think it's going to be a unique year because we're looking at an Illinois offense that looks to be fairly formidable on paper, with good wide receivers, excellent offensive line, a good quarterback, and a running back group that is good if they can just stay healthy. The crazy thing is, for the first time in at least a while for Brett Bielema, the defensive line scares the living heck out of me. And I think injuries could be terrifying in that particular area. This team could win as many as 8 games. They could also win as many as 4. And I think that consistency to detail and that how they play in fourth quarters is going to be a big, big determinant of that.
I want to get your final thoughts here on just the money aspect. I mean, obviously so much in play. I mean, NIL, we know Memorial Stadium, there's the expansion going on, there's money being spent there. There's the house settlement. And so again, Josh Whitman talking a couple of weeks ago when he met with everyone in the media, and you guys were there, in terms of the $22 million they've got to come up with to handle that. What's your big concern financially with the entire athletic program going into this 2024-25 academic season?
I think what you're going to see, they have to make cuts. They're going to have to cut some things, and whether that's staff, whether that is, which is just a small cut, but you're going to have to cut sports. I mean, it's just reality. You cannot, because those main sports are what sustain everything. And if you're going to have to give NIL to these lower sports, and you're going to have to give them scholarships and pay coaches and things like that, it's not cost effective. So they're going to have to make some cuts to pay out that $22 million, because as Josh Whitman said, it's not $22 million new dollars. It's $22 million we've really already spent on different things.
And one of the things for me is, I would hate to see them cut staff, but I do, or even sports, but I can see, not to diminish the non-revenue sports, but I think those will be the ones that will get hit the hardest, because he's done a great job. He's done a great job of building the program. He's done a great job of with facilities. But at some point in time, you're right. The rent's going to be due, and I hate to say it, but like some of the sports that typically just don't generate money. And then we talked earlier, in the show, you're going to go out and play, some of those schools out west. That's going to be tough financially. So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do it. It's, this new conference thing is great, but it also comes with a big price tag.
Larry, you asked what I'm really afraid of. I'm really afraid that Illinois is not prepared for this. I think Josh Whitman's comment to us in the roundtable of, we don't have $22 million just sitting around. We don't know how we're going to do this. And that's not, like only Illinois' problem. Like that's a power conference problem right now. We don't have the money for this. And I watched Josh Whitman say 2 years ago at the Big Ten Media Days, when they announced like the whole big TV thing, we've already earmarked that money. Like Sturdy said, this isn't money that they haven't already earmarked for, and they can just move stuff around. That's not how this works. I'm concerned about how this is going to work. I think Josh Whitman sees a future in which maybe that $22 million goes toward football and maybe a tiny little bit toward men's basketball. And then everybody else has got to figure out what they're going to do on their own. And everybody else has got to be self-sufficient. And if you're not self-sufficient, you're in trouble. I think that's where this is headed. And that's why I think, this major conference, this major Big Ten, this 18-team Big Ten might not be a reality for these non-revenue sports. We might go back to something that's more regionally based for the non-revenue sports that aren't involved in these television money deals. I think that's definitely on the table, and I think that could save the bacon for a lot of these schools that are worried about how we're going to pay out all of this house settlement money going forward.
Yeah, I think the financial future is the touchiest, because Illinois, when they fundraise, they don't open up the door to 1 million people in their population like Columbus, Ohio is. They're going to have to be creative. They're going to have to go after alumni, and they're going to have to stop fishing in the same pools. They're going to have to develop other big fish out there. And that, from a fundraising standpoint, is not easy to do.
Something I know that Sturdy talked about in the commercial break beforehand, also Title IX. How does that fit into all of this? And I know that we'll talk with here in a few minutes. We're talking with the commissioner from the MAC, and we're going to get his thoughts on that as well in terms of, again, where do we go from here? Gentlemen, great conversation. Matt Stevens and Kedric Prince, the Illini guys, we appreciate you. Having a great weekend. Hopefully you guys still have some barbecue left over from the 4th. And if you do, share with Mike, because he already ate all of his. Stay with us. We've got some little NFL talk coming up. Quarterback chat as we are getting ready for camps just a few weeks away. This is the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. You're listening to the Illini Guys Radio Network.